had a little pouch. I still carry the same wallet around. There's a little pouch there. I used to keep a gram of cocaine in there, and there was always a fresh gram in my wallet, you know. And I look back now, and it's like, wow, that's crazy.
There's so much peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
It's like every time you go out, the only settings that you're going to have a conversation is over a drink. Let's go out, let's go to the bar. But no one is saying, hey, let's go to a retreat center, let's meditate.
You know, addiction is rooted in trauma. Most of us have been through shit in our lives. But also, you can remake your mind. You can rewire your brain. But it is hard work. And nobody's just okay, by the way. You know, we think you've got people in your life, you're like, why are they always okay? And if you sit down and talk to that person, it's not that they're not going through something. It's that they have the tools to handle it better than we have. I think one of the hardest things for addicts to overcome is guilt and shame because of, you know, the damage that you did during your active addiction. The challenge with most of us in recovery is forgiveness of self. Even 6 years down the road, I could still be in my car and think about a moment in my active addiction where I did something that was, you know, irreprehensible. And I'll go into this like feeling of absolute sort of emptiness and loss. You know, there is some serious damage done that may have affected them for their lives. And while it's all well and good that I got 35 days of treatment and got to turn my life around, you know, you can leave people in places that they'll stay in for the rest of their lives as well.
Sometimes you probably do have that question at the back of your mind, or you maybe had that question of like, why me? When you look back at it, I'm sure you see that maybe I did have to go through this journey so that I can help these people.
I don't know, God, higher power, however you want to call it. I've had a few moments in my life where I should have died or something tragic should have happened, and I've just avoided them by the skin of my teeth, as they say. And I think that's part of the reason that I feel like I should be helping addicts now, is because I think I'm here for a greater purpose.
You're listening to the Men's Forum.
Your guide to being a better man.
Here we talk about everything to do with dealing with the nuances of life as a man.
This is your safe space to finding solutions to any problem you could be facing as a man.
We're your hosts Rajveer and Shalin, and we're sitting down with guests who share their personal experiences and insights, adding depth and new perspectives to our discussions. Today we're diving into the powerful story of Fareed Kimani, who has transformed his life after battling a nearly lifelong addiction to alcohol and undergoing 6 years of recovery.
Now 2 years sober, he's pioneering Kenya's first holistic rehab center. Fareed opens up about the darkest days of his addiction, the turning points that led him to seek help, and the powerful role of Alcoholics Anonymous in his recovery.
Being an alcoholic isn't easy, and the best way to support someone through this journey is through grace. Fareed shares the impact his journey has had on his family and his social life, and provides invaluable advice for anyone who's struggling with addiction or trying to support a loved one through such challenges.
Let's get into it.
Thank you so much, Fareed, for joining us. We're super excited to have you. I used to listen to your show on Radio X. Like, you play the best rock music. Shalene sent me a message and she's like, Fareed Kimani is coming to the show. And I was like, whoa.
I'll never understand that excitement, but thank you very much.
Yeah, so introduce yourself and tell us what's up.
Yeah, so my name is Fareed Kimani, former radio presenter for many, many years, a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. You know, I still refer to myself as an alcoholic and a drug addict. I know I'll always be an alcoholic and a drug addict. So I think it's important that to recognize that in oneself, meaning that I can't just pick up a drink and have a drink and go home. You know what I mean? That's just who I am. I'm a certified addiction counselor now, as well as a television producer, director, sometimes host of reality shows like The Real Housewives of Nairobi.
But that was recent, right? You just did a couple of weeks ago.
A couple of weeks ago, yeah. What are we in now? July.
Okay.
Yeah, end of July, we shot 2 episodes. I do the reunion every year. So there's 13 episodes or 12 of the season. And then the ladies sit down and I moderate a conversation. I try and sort of referee 6 women going at each other for 2 hours of TV.
What's that like?
It's I can share this because the next day I go to body talk therapy, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with. It's a body tapping technique, trauma-based therapy. I go once every month or so. And I went the next day because I needed to clear my energy because it was so toxic. But that's what sells, right? Reality TV, that's what people want to see. So
yeah, especially in Kenya, people love the drama.
By the way, Real Housewives of Nairobi is the #1 streamed television show in African television history.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah. And they have Real Housewives of Durban, Cape Town, Lagos, Abuja, Johannesburg, but Nairobi, for some reason, is the #1 stream show in African television history.
Wow.
Yeah, so
That's super to be part of.
yeah,
for
it's
sure.
great, and I didn't know I was going to get called back for season 2's reunion, so I was very excited when they called me back.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So talking about the dealing with your trauma with tapping, someone told me like you go then you're tapping into all the issues that
It's slightly different. So body talk, shout out to Janet, who is my body talk therapist. She's an amazing woman, and she's going to be a big part of a project we're working on, which is the Addiction Treatment Center. It's so she taps on your wrist and can kind of figure out where you're holding the trauma. Now, I hold from my addiction, I hold a lot of guilt and shame, and that, funnily enough, that's usually centered to your lower back, and I often have very bad lower back pains. And I think one of the hardest things for addicts to overcome is guilt and shame because of the damage that you did during your active addiction. Even if people do forgive you, you still hold on to it. I think the challenge with most of us in recovery is forgiveness of self. Even 6 years down the road, I could still be in my car and think about a moment in my active addiction where I did something that was, irreprehensible. And I will go into this like feeling of absolute sort of emptiness and loss. And you have to really sort of build yourself back out of it. And I think, I have friends in recovery, my sponsor, for example, who is 27 years sober, who is still goes through the same thing, still calls himself an alcoholic, and it's interesting that, we will always, there's a great saying in the Alcoholics Anonymous program. I noticed you have the AA Big Book on the table here, which is great, which is we will not forget the past, nor will we shut the door on it. So in other words, we can live a life in our recovery, but we must always remember what brought us to the Big Book or brought us to the environment of recovery. And I think that's always going to be the challenge, is that we tend to generally fall back into those elements of guilt and shame. And that's trauma-based, right? That's where now you have to make that decision. One half of your mind is saying, how do I numb this feeling? How do I get past how rotten I feel? Well, the old way was quite simple. Half a bottle of whiskey and a bag of cocaine, and you feel great for a few hours. Next day you might feel like shit. Can we swear on this thing, by the way? Yeah. Next day you might feel a bit like shit. But, it's almost like this temporary relief, knowing what's the next 2 or 3 days are going to feel like. It's almost like you can justify that by saying, okay, but I don't have to feel like this for 3 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours or tonight, And I think that's where addiction really starts to play. So we talk about trauma. Addiction is rooted in trauma. Most of us have been through shit in our lives. I sit in a room every Sunday with some of the smartest, most creative, most beautiful people, 70, 80, 90 of them, all different colors and races and ages and creeds and economic demographics. But they've all got one thing in common. They've all been through so much shit in their life that led them to a place of recovery. We're a very small percentage of addicts, the ones that are in recovery. There's many more that don't enter this place of recovery. We're really blessed to be in a place of understanding what we've done, trying to make amends for what we've done and trying to make a difference in our lives. But there's so many people out there that are still lost, and it's trauma-based. When I was in rehab, there's a staggering statistic that most male alcoholics or addicts there's two components. One is fathers were alcoholics, and the other one is abusive families, abusive upbringing. Now, it could be one, it could be the other, or it can be both. I'm a product of both. And going into rehab, I just thought I was an asshole who liked to drink, and I wasn't going to change for anyone.
Let's backtrack a little bit. How did it all start?
Oh, God, I don't know, man. I think it was just before college, last year of high school in the US, starting to experiment with weed and booze. And then you get to college and there was LSD and ecstasy and mushrooms and, I was in college in the 90s. You asked me how old I was earlier. 50 is the age. So I went to college in 92, and it was sort of like the second awakening after the 60s. Everyone was sort of experimenting with drugs and alcohol, but now there was ecstasy, and I never touched cocaine in college, weirdly. But, as people got out of college and went into their professional lives or whatever they were doing after college, you sort of see people that had kind of peaked with the use of drugs and alcohol in college, they start to sort of taper. And then, as they go to their 30s, they sort of, I was just like this, man. I went from bartending in university to moving to one of the biggest bars in Atlanta, Georgia as a bartender. It was flair bartending with bottle flipping. And I mean, people used to come for that show and you feel like a hero. And that's where I discovered cocaine and a combination of alcohol and booze. And, I'm not trying to glorify it, but, it was a time. most of my friends were getting into their professional lives in terms of like working at KPMG or becoming journalists. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to stay in this scene for a little while, Then that got out of control. They say every alcoholic or drug addict hits a rock bottom. Well, the name of the bar in Atlanta was called Rock Bottom Brewery, which is when I tell that story to my addict friends, they're like, I mean, it was written on the wall, my brother. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you an interesting story about AA in a minute as well, because there's another really weird likeness to my life. And I just sort of wanted to continue that life, up well into my 30s and 40s. Got married, had kids, went through periods where I would try really hard to stay sober, because I did understand when I got to around 37, 38 years old that there was obviously a problem. We did outpatient counseling with a lovely lady who recently passed away by the name of Pat Manners here in Nairobi. But, getting tossed into the limelight in radio after coming from Atlanta immediately was also, detrimental to someone with a big ego who is quite self-centered and selfish and wanted to take everything from the world and not give anything back. All of a sudden I was on radio on a Friday, and on a Monday I was a superstar here. It was crazy, I was like, this is amazing. And then obviously I discovered where to get the drugs in Nairobi, and just thought, hey, this is the life of the position I'm in. This is how, if I'm doing this job, this is how I should live my life.
Were you using every day?
Towards the end, yes. 2016, 17, and up to when I went to rehab, I was using more or less every day. Yeah. I had a little pouch. I still carry the same wallet around. This little pouch there. I used to keep a gram of cocaine in there, and there was always a fresh gram in my wallet, and I look back now and it's like, wow, that's crazy.
And it's expensive, right?
It's expensive. Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah, but I was making really good money as well. As a young guy doing radio, I was making some good money in those days. But, and that was really what it was, right? Nice big house in Lavington, 3 stories, 3 cars for my wife and I. We're 2 people, 3 4-wheel drives. There was the third car it never left the parking. You know what I mean? I bought a new car, from Toyota showroom. It was just, I think it was. A lot of it was my father was like this, as I think you mentioned that you had a similar
issue, yes,
with your dad, right? So you probably saw life like life was, you make money, you lose money, you make money, you lose money. It's temper tantrums, drinking binges, whatever the case may be, parents fighting, all that. So I saw my dad go like this. So when he died, he kind of left us with nothing, And so being self-made as well sort of gave me even more of an ego, because, in our communities, and I'll say this from my perspective, I could be wrong from your perspective, there's a lot of handed down successful businesses and houses and cars and lifestyles that I don't know. So I made this money and I could go on holidays with the people who had on generational wealth. But then I spent more than I had as well, because it was always like, no, well, so-and-so got this car, we're going to get this car, And I still remember, interestingly, my firstborn was being born, and my wife said, our good friends, a couple friends of ours, their kids were 3, 4 years old. They've offered to give us all their, stuff for newborns. And I lost my shit. No, I will fly to South Africa and I'll buy that shit new. It's just stupidity. You know what I mean? Now it's like, what a lovely gesture that is from somebody. And I'm basically saying, no, I don't want secondhand. It was an effect of seeing so much lost as a child that I had to prove that, this was all mine. And it's just all ego driven, really.
But I can't relate to you if like 2 things, abusive family and alcoholic father. It does make a very big impact, because I drink like shit, but of late I've reduced. But it makes sense, because you've seen that growing up. Mm-hmm. You automatically, you're like, if you have a problem, your father went and had a couple of beers or a whole bottle of whiskey that's going to solve your problems. And at the end of the day, your mind is so disruptive. Like, yes, I'll drink, I'll feel so good. And the moment I start drinking, my anxiety is gone, my stress is gone. Then I hit this plateau and I break through it, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to keep drinking till I black out.
It's almost like you think you've cracked life's codes and you haven't. Yeah.
So I get it. Like, sometimes I blame him. I'm like, dude, you should have taught us better. You shouldn't have given me my first drink, because that really calms down. But now when you come down to self-realization and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you tell yourself that you're in this perpetual denial 24/7, that I'm not an alcoholic, but when I drink, I can't stop. So I'm like, I even messaged them the other day. I'm like, guys, I think I have a problem. Because yes, I've not drank for 2 months, but the moment I start, I don't want to stop.
That's interesting you say, you start and can't stop. I mean, those are all signs of an alcoholic, unfortunately. I mean, I go out with my partner for dinner and girlfriends in the past or wife, whatever. And I will see someone have half a glass of wine and leave half a glass. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how, like, what are you doing?
I'm one of those.
Yeah, so you can leave a drink.
I could leave a drink.
I cannot leave a drink
Yeah,
for shit.
no, I can't. I can't. I mean, and I now that I don't drink and I see it, I'm like, wow, that's incredible because I'm not that person. So you have to draw a line. You're either this kind of person, which is a person like yourself who can have a half a beer or a half a glass of wine and say I'm good, or you're like us, sorry, like me, where you would. I mean, I have this is really fucked up. But I remember being at a family dinner, 3 or 4 of us, and everyone at the table was drinking wine, and I was on whiskey. This is years ago in my active addiction. And people were just leaving their drinks at this restaurant. And so we got up to leave, and I was blown away by the fact that I'd finished, I think, 3/4 of a bottle of whiskey, and I was still like, okay, what next? What next?
Yeah.
And, someone had 1.5 glasses, another one had 1/4 of a glass, another one had 3 sips of hers, another one had, almost finished the glass. So we all went to the car of the restaurant, of the parking of the restaurant. And I was like, oh, I left something inside. I went and I chugged all those last glasses. Yeah. I was like, I do not, this is unacceptable,
Alcohol cannot go to waste.
Yeah. But I mean, that's how crazy it was. And still not knowing I had a problem. You know what I mean? So,
My gosh.
Yeah.
I very much blame the school system as well, because when you get into alcohol, like your brain is trained that if I'm going through shit, then alcohol can help me. Whereas now that there's all these other tools that can help us go through like our problems, but we're not taught those tools in school.
So I think the age-old, the fact that they can still advertise alcohol on billboards is ridiculous to me. But that's that's a policy issue, not my issue, because they'll say, you can't smoke weed, for example, or you can't cocaine, whatever. If you're caught with a gram of cocaine, or no, if you're caught with a joint here, it's 10 years in prison or 1 million shilling. I don't know, some ridiculous, thing. But more people die from alcohol-related situations every year. Your father being obviously one of them. My dad was a similar situation. So, I think that it's good there is a lot of sober curiosity coming from this generation. I think guys your age who are now saying, actually, I mean, you're from the Sikh community, and I mean, your community is known to go hard. Dude.
Oh yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
They're crazy.
So
I'm often told, like, are you really?
Yeah.
But his capacity is worse than a newborn.
Yeah, but that's good though. For obvious reasons, most of my friends in active addiction were Sikh. So
Okay,
yeah,
wow.
because I mean, I can drink like a Sikh. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It was the joke. You know, and karogas were my thing. You know what I mean? I never ate. I don't even know what a karoga tastes like because we're also hammered by the time the food was cooked. But I think it's also interesting that now you've got this generation of people saying there is an alternative to alcohol, and the long-term effects are not just you waking up with a hangover or thinking you got through a bad time because you've numbed it with alcohol, but actually the health effects, liver, pancreas, all those things that are obviously occur from overuse or from sustained drinking of alcohol. But I do think that there's enough information out there now, especially with the internet, to understand when someone has the access to the internet, then it is quite easy to find out that the dangers of drinking. And I am not ever going to say in a room full of people that are drinking responsibly, you shouldn't drink, because I wish I could drink responsibly. I just don't have that button, that off button or that slow down lever that every normal person has. So it's not an evangelical view of sobriety or recovery. My view is it's my journey. And I share it with amazing people in the Alcoholics and Narcotics Anonymous community.
Talking about Nakada, there's statistics. I was reading about it, and 2.7 million people between the age of 15 to 65 in Kenya are alcohol addicted people. And that's a lot. That's a lot of people.
I have that stat on our business plan for the treatment center we're opening. I remember doing the research for the business plan and looking at that stat going, that can't be right. So I actually called someone that I know who works at Nakada, and I was like, I think you guys have fucked up on your, like, go back and find, and he's like, no, that's actually an accurate statistic.
In Kenya, it's widely socially accepted. It's more like if you go out, you should have a drink. There's so much peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
It's like every time you go out, the only settings that you're going to have a conversation is over a drink. Let's go out, let's go to the bar. But no one is saying, hey, let's go to a retreat center, let's meditate.
Or even let's just go have a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? Which is crazy. Alcohol is, but I think that's a global thing. I don't think that's a Kenyan thing. Although
Here,
I will.
have you seen how guys Roomba here?
Yeah. Who is it? I'm working with this company from New York, and the CEO is here. He's an American guy, and he was amazed at how Kenyans drink. Like he was blown away. He's like, man, Kenyans. He actually doesn't drink. He's a Muslim guy. But he obviously was going to these dinners and like networking events when he was here. And he was like, it's unbelievable. And he's from New York. Like that's like a fast, modern city where I'm sure people drink quite a bit.
Yeah,
he was blown away by
just go to a drink.
So my friend moved down from Germany, he's moved to Germany and then he's married a German. And when they come down, and Germans drink quite a lot, man. And this guy is like, dude, we thought Germans could drink like Oktoberfest. Really? It's like Kenyans, you guys know how to drink.
But what really saddens me is how many of these people have access to rehab centers. Like if they actually want to change their lives, they can't afford it.
I tell you, rehab is excruciatingly expensive, but also running a rehab. What I've discovered now as we plan to launch our rehab by January next year is the costs that go into it are ridiculous. You need certified counselors, psychiatrists, you need a doctor on call, you need nurses on site 24/7. So there are costs. So you're going to have a large part of the population that's just going to fall by the wayside because treatment is so expensive. Also, insurance companies here don't recognize addiction as an insurable. I think there are a few that are starting to.
So some do. Who I'm insured with, they cover the counseling bit. But they do, but not the addiction.
Let's give them a shout out. Who are they? Because that's amazing.
So Britam, I'm with Britam Insurance.
Okay,
yes.
right, awesome. And I think Jubilee also and APA are starting to delve into mental health and addiction spaces. I went for 35 days. It was 28 initially, and then I added on an extra 7 when I was in South Africa, and it was $15,000. Yeah,
what?
Yeah, wow. Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty high end place, to be fair.
Yeah,
close to 2 million shillings with your flight.
So why didn't you choose to go to rehab here?
Because they're all shit. Sadly. And you don't have to cut that out of this edit.
No, I'm not. It's because it's definitely a reality.
I shouldn't say they're all shit. That's I've been to 5 or 6 in the last 4 months, just to see. I don't agree with the way they run their program. That's probably a better way to put it. Saying they're shit, they might work for some, but it's really wrong of me to say that. I don't agree with the way the program is run. I think addiction. So our treatment center is called the Full Circle Healing Center. We're not calling it a rehab. We're not calling it addiction treatment center because there's going to be so much holistic work. Myself and my partners have been through a lot of holistic healing and understand the benefits of holistic healing as well. Obviously, we are going to be 12-step based, which is obviously the fundamentals of the big book. The phrase that I've coined is recovery should be enjoyed, not endured. And I think that's fundamentally the basis of recovery. It's a beautiful journey. It's a really difficult journey though too. I mean, I go through struggles all the time if I'm having an argument with my partner or something. I pitch for a job, and you're called back and said, okay, it's between you and another production house or you and another director, and then they call you 2 days later and say, oh, they went with the other. Those are all reasons to drink. They say addicts only need an excuse. Holidays, birthdays, and Tuesdays. That's what we need. Any excuse in the world to pick up a drink. So it's not easy, and I think that one of the things that I think that needs to happen more is the aftercare after you get out of treatment, because that is non-existent here, and really, truthfully, I don't think it's existed in most places. When you leave, they basically want you to come back.
Oh yeah, so they make money
to make more money.
They're looking at me. He's here for 35 days.
Wow,
$15,000. Let's give him 6 months. Hopefully he'll come. I could be wrong, but I think that because it's a business at the end of the day.
It's a business at the end of the day.
The recovery rate for people out of rehab is less than 30%. The sustained recovery rate. So if there's 10 of us in a room that went to rehab, 7 of you are going to relapse and continue on your path of self-destruction. 3 of us will. enter a phase of long-term sobriety. So it's very low.
So you're not equipped with the tools to help you sustain.
No.
You're
So
just-
yeah, exactly. You're left on your own. I was in rehab. I came back to a pretty difficult situation, and I didn't even get a phone call. Are you okay? From the treatment center. I mean, I gave him $15,000. Pick up the phone and give me a call. So 4 years of kind of in and out of the AA program. 4 years of relapsing. And then immediately, the last 2 years, 2+ years, found a great sponsor and got more embedded in the program. I could probably be more involved, to be honest, and then finding other things that work for me, whether it was exercise or meditation or body talk therapy or Reiki healing, whatever it is. And those are the things that have helped me, the combination of everything. And that's kind of the fundamental basis of what we're trying to do with our treatment center as well, is to give people options. So when they leave, they know that if they sort of if they aligned with yoga in our program, then they know that they can do yoga twice a week, and that'll help them to stay centered and all the things that help you to deal with. Life's a shit show. You guys know that. It's not easy, man. It's it's a joke.
You need to keep
it's no wonder people drink, I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? I get it, know? So yeah.
What was the impact on your family during your addiction? Because you mentioned that you're married and you have kids.
Yeah, so my wife left with my kids when I was in rehab. She's Swiss. And moved to Switzerland. Now that's the misconception of having told that story so many times is that she picked up and left and wanted nothing to do with me, which is really not the case. There was a period where we were going to try and make it work. She always wanted to move back to Switzerland, to home, and have our kids grow up there. So I was we were trying to make this long distance thing work, and I go in and out and blah, blah, blah. And, I think at one stage I just said, okay, you know what, actually, we're probably not in love anymore. So what's the best solution for everyone? So the kids are there with her. I'm in and out 5-6 times a year. I was there 3 weeks ago. I go back next week. So I spend all my money going to see my kids. It's not a chore or a disadvantage for me. That's just how it is. They're very happy there. She's a great mom. We're very good friends. I think they've got better opportunities growing up there than they would here. And is it ideal? No. By no means is it an ideal situation. Is it what's best for the kids? Probably. And am I going to be a present father throughout their lives? Absolutely. Someone asked me the other day, where do you spend your money? I said, on seeing my children, I mean, I have friends who are divorced and both parents live in Nairobi, and yet the father doesn't ever see his kids. My kids are, an 8-hour flight away, and I'm there whenever I can. So I have gratitude for two things. One, she could have easily stopped me from ever seeing them again. I mean, I was always a great dad. I was not a great husband during that period. And the second thing is, what if I couldn't afford it? I have gratitude for that, I mean, there's got to be situations where people leave Kenya with their kids and the father or the mother, whoever is left behind, can't afford to fly out and see their kids. I mean, that's difficult. I've got the means and the opportunity to get on a plane whenever I want and go and see my children. So, like I said, is it ideal? No, but, do you make the best of a situation? And that's a really interesting tool to recovery, is how do you make the best of those situations? So I do what I can to get out there and see them. So when I came back to an empty house, basically, to go back to your question. And they knew that happened when I was in rehab, because she sent the email to the rehab center, because we don't have access to phones and laptops while we're there. And again, no phone call, nothing when I came back. And I must have been a high priority relapse case going to an empty house. And that's what I mean about that aftercare. I think, because the funny story is, I remember my 28 days was over and I was like, man, I can't go home to that empty house. So I asked them, I said, look, can I pay and stay for another 7 days? I'm just not ready to. And if I don't feel ready, then I'll just keep adding. Anyway, so they were using me as an example in a group therapy session of about 30 people. And the counselor said, this guy's world has been rocked. His wife left and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, people knew in the treatment center because, we talk. And then I said, yeah, but that must have happened before. And he said, no, we've never had anything like that happen to us before. So I was like, oh, great. So I don't know if I'm a case study at Bloomingdale Addiction Treatment Center, but I might be. So
it might be a marketing tool.
Yeah, Jesus, man. Like that's but that's crazy, right? So I was the only one in their whole history that's happened to. But it's interesting though, because at the end of the day, it took me a couple of years to get over the resentment of her leaving, and then when it clicked. A couple of years back, I just woke up one morning and said, "All right, no more victim." Right, you've got the opportunity to go and see your kids when you want. She's very adamant. She has a partner now, a very nice guy that I met, but she's never once let them question who their dad is. It's not always going to be easy. The oldest is 11, the youngest is turning 7. That's why I'm going back next week. Like I said, I have access and I have the means and I have a solid relationship with her that we can have conversations. And so, I'm weirdly enough, I'm taking my partner for my son's birthday. So it's going to be me and my partner and her partner and my kids. And I'm just like, how does that even fucking work?
No, but it's good. Acceptance is a great virtue, right? Then it makes things easier.
And I think humility, what someone once told me this in treatment, and they know my issues with ego and self-centeredness and the things that I've had to tame over the years in recovery. And they said, humility is not humiliation. And that's such a lovely phrase, right? Humility is not humiliation, because we think being humble is to be humiliated. To show humility is to be humiliated, but they're completely different things, right? Humility is very different. I met her partner a couple of trips back, and I think she was a little bit like, oh God, what's going to happen? And actually I was fine, I was fine, because it's nice that they have a strong male figure in their lives. It's permanent, because I'm not permanent. I'm in and out. But yeah, it's acceptance, as you said. And once you start to accept things for the way they are, I think that is where life will shift for any addict, for any person, not just addicts, for any person, the fundamentals of the 12-step program, we asked not to talk about it too much in press and media, but I will just give you a bit of is one of the steps is step 4, which is this honest and fearless inventory you do of yourself, and it's resentments, fears, and sex and love conduct. And it took me many years to put it off and then to do it, and then just to see the irreprehensible behavior that I was complicit to and the lives I've damaged along the way, especially with partners, women in my life. There is some serious damage done that may have affected them for their lives. And while it's all well and good that I got 35 days of treatment and got to turn my life around, you can leave people in places that they'll stay in for the rest of their lives as well. I think that's the hard part of recovery is, especially for other people to see that, okay, great. So you look good and your mind is great and you're clear and your career's going well and you found someone. But what about the shit you did to me, And that's another step in the recovery program, which is step 8 and 9, which is to write a list of amendments. And step 9 is to start making them. And that is the hardest, because a lot of people don't want to hear your voice or see your face,
That is so beautiful. Just the awareness of that. Not many people have that awareness that what I may have done in the past could have impacted people in certain ways
for their lives.
For their lives,
yeah.
And people make certain decisions based on that. Then they just go a whole different route.
This is there's a saying, 2 ships passing in the night, and how close they pass or how close they get to each other can determine the path for the rest of that journey, right? I think for me, I've had a lot of, going back and thinking about the people whose lives I've affected, good and bad. And also remember this, this is not a, self-flagellation kind of thing where you constantly beat yourself up, because, if me and person X are in a relationship, there's 2 people in that relationship. If I'm treating you wrong, you have the right to leave as well.
Agreed. Sure.
But at the same time, you may have said and made promises that you weren't willing to keep, and I've made a few amendments to some people from my past, and a lot of them have been like, fuck off, mate. Like, don't call ever again. Like, it's because of you this happened. It's because of you I'm like this. And I think that just having that awareness of, everyone from the Askari to the person that sleeps in the bed with you, to your parents, to your siblings, just remember the smallest things can have monumental effects. Very much where the smallest changes you make can have monumental effects on your life, and that's what recovery is. It's a journey of one step at a time, one day at a time. I would love to say in 6 years from now, I'm doing A, B, C, and D, and I've got my 3 treatment centers open, but I can only look at what's happening today, and hopefully that has a positive effect on tomorrow. But I think that awareness is key. And I think the 12-step program really does, there are certain steps that everyone in the world should do. I told you I'd tell you a really funny story about AA. So when I came out of rehab, which was in April 7th, 2018, I joined all these AA WhatsApp groups because I was trying to do, they say to do 90 meetings in 90 days. And I did 73 in those 90 days. And trust me, you can do 3 meetings a day in Nairobi physical meetings, not Zoom. There are meetings. We have a lot of people in the program here. It's amazing, actually. So anyway, then around May, I started seeing this thing, Founders Day, 10th of June. It was a Friday. And I kept saying, oh, okay, it must be 10th of June because it's a Friday, but that cannot be the Founders Day of AA. So anyway, so I go to this Founders Day barbecue and everyone's, talking about how 1934, this incredible human being by the name of Bill W. founded AA. So 10th of June is my birthday as well. So I was like, wow. So AA was also founded on my birthday. You know what I mean? So there's a couple of things. The Rock Bottom Brewery, this, and I'm like, man, I think my path was already drawn out for me.
Done,
Yeah.
So just for people who don't know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous, could you just a quick brief?
Sure. Look, it's a program of people willing to stop drinking. That's it. And when I say willing to stop drinking, it doesn't mean you can't come to a meeting if you drank yesterday. You can come.
Okay.
If you have a desire, then our doors are open to you and we would love to have you. And, some of the closest relationships I've built in my recovery have been through that program. Like I said, I'd like to be more active in the program. It's just, sometimes time doesn't allow, but those are all excuses because there's always time. You know what I mean?
No, you're busy.
But I found my center in AA. I found a community of people willing to, that I can call at any time of day. I still have a problem picking up the phone and calling someone when I'm struggling, but I think that's more trauma-based than anything else. But it's a program for people with the desire to stop drinking. I think that's, or Narcotics Anonymous would be a desire to stop using drugs. Gambling Anonymous, desire to stop gambling. Sex and Love Anonymous, desire to stop using people for your own needs, And through the program, I've learned that I belong in AA, Narcotics Anonymous, Sex and Love Anonymous. I'm fully aware that the only thing I never did, which is crazy because people are always surprised, I hate gambling. And it's a good thing because I think if I'd started gambling, it would have been a whole different situation for me,
Crazy.
Because, all it's doing is all of these things give you a nice big fat dopamine hit that takes you here. And then all of a sudden it brings you straight down to the depths of the darkness of your soul, and then you sort of how do I get out of it? Oh, I know. I'll get a bag of cocaine or I'll get a bottle of whiskey or I'll go and, call up a hooker or I'll go to the casino, and then that's the vicious cycle, right? Is how you get out of it. I think it's a program for those willing to stop. What I love about it is if you had a drink, that's fine. If you drank last night and you feel like today's the day you want to start your recovery journey, come. There's no time limit or time frame or, if you come to the meeting and you've been drinking and all they'll say is just don't share in the meeting. Just sit and listen. So it's just this beautiful group of people. Like I said, every Sunday I sit with some of the most intelligent, creative, wonderful human beings, but all just a bit fucked up like me.
Do you mind sharing where it is? If
Absolutely.
people are watching, at least they can get an idea of.
So I'll give you the meetings that I go to. So there's Lavington United Church, which is opposite Kengeles.
That's my favorite place.
Yeah, well,
the
by the way,
burgers are really good.
Yeah, they are. And the Tuesday 2-for-1 burgers, right? Tuesdays and Fridays at 6:30 p.m. And then Sunday, the one I do is at Abyssinia Restaurant in Brookside from 9:45 to 10:45. I remember my first meeting out of rehab at Lavington United Church, and I was sharing that I used to go to Kengeles 5 nights a week, and I had no idea there was a church across the road. And I did the artwork for Choices Rock Night. I don't know if you guys might be a bit young. So when Capital started the real rock movement, which is 2001, 2002, we started a rock night at Choices. Which is, I don't know if you guys know Choices. It was a bar on Baricho Road.
Yes,
about
it, yes.
Yeah, it was a great place. They had chicken tikka outside, inside people just getting hammered, right?
Oh wait, there used to be some Battle of the Bands there.
Yeah. We were I used to MC that rock night every Sunday. And I remember they were trying to come up with some artwork for those days. I don't think it was social media, but somewhere in the papers or something. And I had done artwork with a friend of mine, I won't name him, but he was at an agency, of an AA room with these chairs in a circle. And on the blackboard, it said, Alcoholics Anonymous is canceled for Choices Rock Night tonight at 7 p.m. And I had no idea what my future was going to look like. Yeah.
But let me give you a scenario, right? Since we hang out with a lot of people and we have a physical men's forum that meets once a month, assuming there's someone who's got a alcohol problem, assuming that he's not aware of it. Mm-hmm. And he's damaging his family, he's damaging himself, he's damaging all his work, his life, everything. How do we approach the conversation? Because when you approach the conversation saying that you have a problem, that's for him, he's going to flip.
Of course he will. I mean, I would too if someone told me that. I mean, I remember having arguments with my ex-wife all the time when she would say, stop drinking, you drink too much, it's embarrassing, you're slurring tonight, you blacked out while people were still at the house, you know what I mean? And I would be like, yeah, but what the fuck, man? Look at our house, look at the cars, everything's great. I think the recovery journey has to begin with self. If someone's over the age of 18 and can't be sort of handled by their parents, forced to do something, like, it's very difficult. It's really difficult, especially if someone hasn't realized it. I think a good, solid conversation of friends, interventions are also, they're very helpful. We had one recently with an addict who ended up going to South Africa for treatment. I'm part of a 12-step group where we go on call to the homes of addicts from time to time. It's just difficult, I think two or three good friends sitting down and just having a conversation and just, hopefully, it sinks. If it doesn't, then you just have to keep trying,
But not coming at an angle where we're shaming them.
No.
That's to come with a very soft approach.
I have my thoughts when people say it's a disease. I think, there's a certain train of thought of people that will say, how can you say it's a disease when if I put a glass of whiskey in front of you, you can make a choice not to drink it. You can't say no to a tumor. If you have a tumor, you have a tumor. You know what I mean? But it is a disease. It is. And many of us do suffer from it. So I think the approach would be someone who you think is smoking too much and is coughing up blood, for example. You would obviously send them to a doctor. So someone who's drinking too much, having this disease, you would obviously say you need help as well, But shaming is that's probably the worst approach, to be honest. Yeah.
What was the tipping point for you when did you realize, okay, I need to go to rehab, this is a problem?
I was doing outpatient therapy with Pat Manners, who I mentioned earlier, and I thought that would be enough, and I just couldn't quit, 6-8 months before I went to rehab, and finally I just sat down with my ex-wife. Well,
what was the outpatient?
So it's just counseling, daily, twice weekly counseling, 2 hours per.
But what got you to that point?
I was trying to quit using cocaine and I couldn't. And I just hated the way it was making me feel. And then funny enough, I stopped enjoying it even when I was doing it, but I still couldn't stop, weird. And I wanted to get clean and I wanted to get healthy and I wanted to get fit. Funny enough, I was very functional too. So I was still going to the gym, still going to work, but my head wasn't right. And, a couple of big fights with my then wife and, having to stay at my aunt's for a few weeks because she didn't want me at home and, all these things sort of compounding. Most of my family doesn't know, so I almost got I almost knocked over 3 people driving home, fucked up one night. I don't know, God, higher power, however you want to call it. I've had a few moments in my life where I should have died or something tragic should have happened and I've just avoided them by the skin of my teeth, as they say. And I think that's part of the reason that I feel like I should be helping addicts now is because I think I'm here for a greater purpose. I have a friend in the program. This is quite a sad story, who fell off a balcony. He was a super film producer, director. Probably we were competition back in the day when I started my TV production life, and he was always better than me. He was getting the bigger jobs than me, and I hated him, but we still partied together. One of these people. And he had a bad accident, and he's got traumatic brain injury and he can't work anymore, and he's...
Is that because of alcohol?
Yeah. Well, using, I'm not sure. He's we become very close in the program and I'm there for him now. Man, that could have been me. I've been in situations where, I've avoided death, or injury, serious injury by the skin of my teeth. I don't know why. And some of them I'm still like, how? Like there's no one else in that situation would have gotten out of it without a scratch. How did that happen? But I think a higher power has guided me through life and has brought me to this point where I'm now saying, okay, how do I help people? How can I be of service to others? Another great phrase from recovery that I love is, we only keep what we have by giving it away. I have it tattooed to my rib, so I see it every morning because that's how I want to live my life. How can I be of service to other people?
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
At the start of when you walked in and we were having that brief conversation, you were talking about God, higher power, and you mentioned a book that you were reading that had a lot of mentioning about God and how that can help you to stop.
Yeah.
And it didn't sit well with you.
So I think we also have to remember that, the the basis of a lot of recovery literature, not just AA, but any recovery literature was created, A, 30s and 40s when the awareness started, and B, it was Middle America. So, they're not going to be talking about Vishnu or Allah. You know what I mean? It's going to be God. What I love about our program, the AA program, is that they've sort of replaced it to higher power.
It's more spiritual.
Yeah, and I am a spiritual person. I am not a religious person. And I used to hear people saying that, and I was punch them in the face and say, what does that even fucking mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But truthfully, I can sit and meditate, and sometimes I'm talking to my mom. Sometimes I'm talking to nothing. Sometimes I'm just having a conversation with myself. If I do a gratitude list at night and fall asleep, it's not that I'm writing a gratitude list to God. It's just that I'm saying to make myself aware of the things I'm grateful for. So, I think that, higher power is a nice way to put it. Some people get scared of the word God. There is agnostics and atheists that would say, well, what about us? Can we not recover because we don't believe in God, And I think you have to be very careful there as well. And the world's changed too. Religion's not what it was, or the awareness of religion has changed too. I think, we're all from different communities, right? Yeah. So last time I go to mosque on the anniversary of my mum's death, and
That's fine. I think you don't really have to step into any worship center to show that you believe in God.
And I like the Jain belief where God is within. That's a beautiful, beautiful.
That's more on the spiritual side.
I love that though. Yeah. Like these guys had it figured out then. So I'm learning a bit about Sikhism now because I've gotten into Bollywood recently. So I've been watching a lot of films that are sort of rooted in Sikhism and the Sikh community. Especially there's a series I was watching called Cat. Have you seen this?
No.
It's about Punjab and in the 80s, and how the Sikhs were like trying to protect the area they were living in, and people. I think it was after the whole Indira Gandhi.
Oh yeah, there was
thing.
that. They wanted to kill
anti-Sikh
all the
movement.
Yeah, the anti-Sikh movement.
But it's phenomenal, and my first sponsor in AA was a Sikh man as well, an older guy, and I find these. I don't want to say they're not alternative religions, but the lesser sort of structured religions like Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. So Jainism and Sikhism I find so fascinating, And I listen to Ekonkar in the car when I'm going to the gym in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'm actually getting goosebumps.
Yeah. It's like, honestly, my girlfriend, on the Blue Moon, she played it when we were meditating. And I just started bawling, man. It was this beautiful woman's voice singing it. And I was like, this is the most amazing centering spiritual tune I've ever heard in my life. Yeah.
So the two centers that I've come across, Brahma Kumaris and the Art of Living. So the Art of Living, I met him yesterday. They do this happiness program. And the way they teach you life is with a whole different perspective where it makes sense. They give you different relative examples and you'll be like, oh yeah, okay. So they've had people who are alcoholics, drug addicts come through to their program and they've recovered. So it's
that's cool.
And they don't have a religion.
It touches very much within.
Yeah, within.
Like just
so
going
it's
within.
more of like getting within yourself and now dealing with your traumas.
Amazing.
So starting with the root cause. Yeah, let's dig that up.
Yeah.
Let's work on it going up.
So, alcohol and drugs. So the drugs and the alcohol are never the problem. The problem is the individual and the trauma. There'll be the argument that alcoholism is passed down genetically, and I think there's definitely a truth to that. But 9 times out of 10, if your father was an alcoholic, you went through some sort of trauma anyway. You know what I mean? So it's rooted in trauma.
True.
The booze and the drugs never the problem. They're a symptom of a much bigger problem. So you have to really get to the trauma in order to grow from the trauma, and then find a path that doesn't require numbing. Like from, a lot of us in recovery get quite heavy into the gym or work. I did my sex and love exploration when I came out of rehab. I just started dating and destroying relationships because that was my replacement for the booze and the drugs, until I realized that's 10 times worse, because now you're destroying other people's lives, not just your own, and then it was work, and then it was gym. So we are always trying to find a way to numb. Sitting still is a hard thing for a lot of addicts. It's really difficult. And that's why meditation and my new favorite song, Ekonkar, which really helps me to meditate. But finding places to center, even if it's 5 minutes a day when you wake up or before you go to bed. But the trauma is always the root. Trauma, PTSD, CPTSD, those are the things that cause us to use and numb. And until you get to the root of where that trauma came from, you will continue to fall back into places that are numbing.
What was your deep-rooted trauma?
just saw a lot of abuse growing up, a lot, a lot of anger, a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension at home. And I, figured the best way to never have to live it again is to just drink and drug, and that would help me. And then, the more it happened, the more I said I wouldn't become like my dad, the more I started to become like my dad, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, how am I any different? I never physically abused anyone, but I was very emotionally abusive to all my partners. Up until this relationship, I've been extremely emotionally abusive. And I think it might be as bad, if not worse, than the physical abuse, So people would say, you're turning out like your father. And I'd be like, I've never hit anyone. What the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean? But actually, what's the difference really? So, yeah, I think my trauma was the physical abuse that I witnessed and saw at home.
Yeah, I've grown up with that all my life. So I think me and my brother, we have deep-rooted traumas because all we saw is knife stabs, my mom being beaten up, chairs being thrown at her, she's bleeding, no one's taking her to the hospital. Like, so we've seen all this, and these are images. Now it makes sense. Now I'm having this conversation with you. I'm like, I'm always trying to delete that in my mind. I've never dealt with it.
You can't delete it until you deal with it. You got to name it to tame it, my friend. You got to name it to tame it, unfortunately. We're working with a really cool organization right now called Albane Institute, who deal with trauma, and they are partners in the treatment center because they know that once you get to that trauma, you can start addressing the wider issues. How do I deal with it now? I go to CrossFit 5 days a week.
You look quite
that's the dopamine hit I desire. 6:30 in the morning. By 6:45, I'm like flying, in a 1 hour class. And I mean, maybe it's not the most healthy way to deal with it, but at least it's healthier than
it's healthy to your body.
Yeah.
And I've also seen like a lot of people dealing with stuff like anger, like just go into a gym, find a boxing bag, and just like hit it out.
There are healthy ways to deal with it. Go for a run, meditate, talk to people. That's something else that we as men have a problem doing is I'm not okay. Could you imagine your fathers who are probably quite a bit younger than my father would be anyway, but saying that, I'm feeling depressed, or I think I drink too much, or I might need help. You know what I mean? That's
never do
that.
Be like pour another double.
Yeah. Especially your community.
No, my dad's like super sober, but he'll look at me drinking, he'll be like,
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing though. Yeah. But I think that we're getting to a place now where I can say. And sometimes I don't say it to anyone. Sometimes I just say it to myself, I can feel that if, my girlfriend comes home and, starts talking about X, Y, and Z, I'm going to fucking lose my shit. You know what I mean? So rather send her a message saying, listen, when you get home, I'm going for a drive, avoid those things by doing something constructive and putting it in its place. I'm writing a documentary right now, which I'm hoping to get funding for, and it's called Make Up Your Mind, which is on mental health, but it's also on all the avenues I've taken along the way. So it's not about me. So please don't it's not like look at me. No, I'm just showing the people that have helped me through their eyes and what they do, whether it's holistic healing, whether it's neuroscience, whether it's, I was on antidepressants for a while. I'm going to speak to all these people in this documentary, and we've given it the title "Make Up Your Mind," which is something that we have the right to do. We can make up our own minds, and comes two ways. One, make up your mind about getting clean and sober and living a happy life, but also you can remake your mind. You can rewire your brain. But it is hard work. It's fucking hard work, I look, and nobody's just okay, by the way. We think you've got people in your life, you're like, why are they always okay? And if you sit down and talk to that person, it's not that they're not going through something. It's that they have the tools to handle it better than we have. Everyone's got the same shit happening to them. We're sitting in a room of 3 people. 2 of us had abusive alcoholic fathers, so it's not a uncommon or unique thing. That means the majority of people in this room have had this similar upbringing with abuse and substances. So it's not that I'm the only person in the world. Someone says, "How could your wife have left when you're rehab?" Listen, I'm not the first or the last guy that's happened to either. You know what I mean? And get out of the victim mindset. Get into a mindset of, how do I improve my life? And that's not to improve my life for you or for my wife, for my mom or for my kids or whatever. It has to start for you. And once you sort out you will see the periphery, the people in your circle, the love, the energy, the abundance. That's where it all shifts. But when you're doing it because I want to look good to you, so I'm sitting here saying, yeah, look at me, I'm in great shape, and I've got my head on. I could just be bullshitting you guys, and I get in my car, and I'm like, I fucking hate life. I'm yelling at people in traffic. I could be that guy too, and I probably would fool all of the viewers and you thinking he's got it all together. But that doesn't. I'll still be in this whirlwind of shit. That's not to say I don't have bad days, because I have fucking monumentally bad days, like everyone, when nothing seems to go right. But then at the end of the day, how do I sit with that? I just, what I do, and this is not advice or a tool for anyone else to use. I'll tell you what I do. I sit down and I write 5 things I'm grateful for in that day. And sometimes I'm on like number 2 going, shit, now what are the next 3 going to be? Because it's been that kind of day. But I'll find it. And sometimes it's a fucking warm bed that I'm getting into, or the fact that I have internet so I can doom scroll for the next 45 minutes on Instagram, whatever. But I will find 5 things that I'm grateful for. My son will call me or send me a message, say, I love you, Papa, can't wait to see you. Grateful. And we have to find those elements in our life because, like I said, everyone has their shit. Everyone has their problems. Some people were raised in, you're saying your father doesn't drink. I'm assuming you have a very calm household without the booze and the alcohol.
Well, without the booze and the alcohol, but then there's been a lot of other trauma.
Right.
In terms of how when my mom came into the family and how she was treated by mother-in-law.
Sure.
And that led her to have her traumas, which were just always brought in the relationship.
Right.
So, of course, we've come up with those.
Right.
Yeah. But this is, like you said, everyone has their own different forms of shit.
And it's some people were just better prepared. Like my kids in Switzerland are so well foundationed for anything because their father lives in Kenya, comes in for 5-6 days, 2 weeks and leaves. That's not easy. My kids cry when I leave, but my ex-wife does such a great job to give them the fundamentals and the foundation of how to deal, because that's traumatic, right? Dad comes, it's fucking amazing for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden he's packing his bag, and my son's crying at the dinner table the night before I leave. That's traumatic for a child, right? But he has the tools to deal with it. When I speak to him the next day, he's smiling, he's happy, and it's not put on. I know he is. So, we can be victims of our own situations, or we can say, no, I'm going to step up for myself, number one. And by stepping up for yourself, you will step up for everyone around you, whether you have kids or a wife or siblings or mom or whatever the case may be. But it has to start with you. And then recovery is very much like that as well. We don't get sober for somebody else. That's the biggest mistake you can make, because when you're not drinking and something bad happens and you can't drink and you're feeling like shit, who are you going to blame? You're going to blame the person who told you to get sober. Now, if the person is you,
you're going to blame
you just deal with it, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, I think that is also an amazing piece of advice for anyone who's watching. It all starts with you, and it all starts with you wanting to make the change for yourself.
Small shifts are so key. So, maybe you're thinking in 2 years from now you want to be CEO of a company and blah, 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 whatever it is, or you want to be producing global documentaries, whatever it is. Well, that's not going to happen by you sitting here wishing in 2 years that's the goal. So what can you do today that's going to change that? You can do this podcast, right? This is a step in that direction, right?
So to not being a victim and be a victor.
Yeah, there you go. I love that. Yeah. And life should be enjoyed, right? We spend too much time not enjoying life.
Yeah.
Sundays come around and everyone's like, fuck, work tomorrow. Go and fucking enjoy your day tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm so blessed because my entire life is based around my creativity. I get to write concepts and direct commercials, but let me tell you, some of that shit is so hard and tiring, and it looks all glamorous. And I know I post all the end result shit on Instagram. To get there is a mission. To even get funding for half that stuff is a nightmare. But I enjoy it. I enjoy the whole journey. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've only started enjoying it 2 years ago. I used to do it because it made me good money. Now I do it for the love of doing it. And now when those two paths cross, when they intersect, when you can make enough to sustain your life and you enjoy what you're doing, I mean, if I died tomorrow, at least people will say he died happy. You know what I mean?
And you made a big impact.
Yeah, but sure. 5 years ago, if I died tomorrow, people say, "Oh, that poor guy, man. what a shit life he had." So the difference a few years can make. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think this is one thing that we missed. How long have you been sober now?
So I've been in recovery from the 1st of March 2018. But I have now been March, April, May, June, July. So 2 years and 5 months.
Okay.
And this is the longest I've been sober.
Nice.
I did relapse 2 years, 5 months ago.
Yeah. But then one thing that you mentioned again, really important, is that if you do have a drink, it's okay. Don't shame yourself.
Yeah.
And you can just go back into the journey again.
I think that the key is, and this is where hardliners of recovery and I differ, a relapse, I always tell my people that I'm counseling or my sponsees, a relapse is not the end of the world, it's a chance to start again.
And don't be afraid to start again.
No, and don't be afraid to come into a meeting and share that you've started again. There's 2 instances I'd like to share that have happened to me in my recovery journey that is so important. One was when my mom died. We buried her on the 19th of March 2022. That was my last drink. And I remember walking into an AA meeting on a Sunday and I was like, right, I'm going to share. And I relapsed and my mom died and blah, blah. And I looked around and my sponsor wasn't in the room and I'm like, okay, thank God. Okay. So I closed my eyes and I was just getting ready to share. And as I opened my eyes, the empty chair next to me, my sponsor was sitting there. I'm like, fuck. Anyway, I did share. And most people commiserated with me and said, it's understandable. Your mom died, blah, blah, blah. And one of the members of the AA group, when he said to me at the end of it, he said, sorry to hear about your mom. I said, yeah, good enough reason to drink. And he looked me in the eyes and said, there's never a good reason. And that changed my entire outlook on recovery. If I'd gotten through that day without drinking, I could have honestly turned around and said, there's nothing
that's going to stop you.
And he was right. The second instance was I was filming in 2020, during COVID, 2021, the show I was showing you guys earlier, the Mombasa. And I was sober completely throughout the shoot. I flew back, I emceed an event for Standard Chartered Bank, went back to the shoot. I mean, I was on fire, creative. I created, wrote, directed, and hosted that show, right? And I was flying. And I remember the last day of filming, I was shooting a street food scene at Makadara Street in Mombasa. And it was like this very sort of gritty, eating shawarma and sauce dripping down my face and like talking to camera. And it was really nice. And I was just thinking about this little bar outside my hotel, which is like a Shabin sort of kioski kabanda kind of bar. And I was like, fucking, you know what, man, I've been sober on this whole shoot. I'm going to have a couple of beers and a whiskey when I'm done with this shoot. So it's during COVID when they shut down all the physical AA meetings. So my crew had a van and a driver, and I was just saying goodbye to them. And I had my own driver and car. And as I was wrapping up, the crew was wrapping up equipment, I went to say bye. And I was really rushing because I was like, couldn't wait to have a drink, And I see this family of 4, mother and father on each side and 2 kids in the middle holding hands and wearing masks because it was during COVID. And the man in the group, he said to me, are you a friend of Bill? And in AA, that's how we identify each other. Bill W. was the founder. So instead of saying, are you an Alcoholics Anonymous? I'll say, are you a friend of Bill? So there's no stigma. And I was so in my own head, I'm like, who the fuck is Bill? I thought it was And he pulled down his mask and he says, we used to go to the meetings together in Westlands. Wow. And I was on my way to a bar and this happened to me. And I hugged him and I said, you just saved my life. Thank you.
Higher powers plan.
Yeah, that's, that is when I tell that story to people in recovery, they're like, there's no way that happened. I checked with my camera crew the next day. I'm like, did you guys see me talking to, the family with the kids? So that just actually happened. You know what I mean? Yeah. But so those certain things have happened in my life that have just made me realize that, my path of recovery is the right decision.
I spent most of my life thinking that, have I done enough by the time I'm 50, and it was always this thing of, my dad was jet setting and, buying houses and losing houses. And he had, I saw so much money and so little money. And I was like, I've never really sort of had this sense of accomplishment. And then, everyone's path is slightly different. And when I tell people now about the treatment center, they're like, wow, that's quite a lot for your age. And I'm like, maybe that is, because everyone's road is going to be different, right? You'll have people, we talked about it earlier as well, people that were given a lot in their 20s and 30s. And, if we start comparing ourselves to them, with their houses and big, fancy places and big houses and things, you're never going to really get ahead. But what do you want to do? What is fundamentally your purpose? And my purpose that I know now is to save lives and help people, become the best versions of themselves, whether that's through platforms like our treatment center or through being guests on podcasts like this, where people can say, shit, man, from the outside, Fareed Kimani's life looks pretty fucking good. You would never imagine that he's struggled like this, and then they realize it, but it's okay as well, you know. And I think you mentioned about, you know, being open and honest about addiction. Having written my old man a letter, which we call no send letters, recently, which I told him, I actually, from years of resentment and only really visiting his grave after 20 years, 2 years ago, or a year ago maybe, it's just to say thank you for giving me the disease of alcoholism, because without it, I wouldn't be able to change people's lives. And I think that's, you know, that's changing victim, completely changing the victim mindset into something else, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think you mentioned higher power earlier. And if you hadn't gone through that entire journey of alcoholism, then right now you're in that place where you're starting the treatment center and you're going to save thousands, if not hundreds of lives. And, you know, sometimes you probably do have that question at the back of your mind, or you maybe had that question of like, why me? And then, you know, when you look back at it, I'm sure like you see that maybe I did have to go through this journey so that I can help these people.
That's interesting. Why me? When you said that, I was like, is it why me as in why me, poor me, I've gone through all this shit to get here? Or to my higher power, why have you chosen me to change people's lives? You know what I mean? So it's a really nice way
Change of perception.
Yeah. Why did you pick me to be? And it's not just me. I'm talking about all the people that have helped me and people that I'm working with. But why have I been chosen to be the person that's going to help the next addict walk into a room?
Because you're Fareed bloody Kimani.
No, you're gonna be a great leader, and you've set yourself as an example of, hey, I confessed to my obsession, and I had many fuck ups to get where I am today. So it's fine. And you know, you've accepted it.
Yeah.
You've worked on it. You've put in work on it, and not many people see that, right?
Yeah.
You did literally drag yourself to a rehab, dragged yourself out the way you came out.
Yeah.
Maybe you relapsed once or twice or thrice, you never know.
Yeah.
But
More
the
times
most
than I can
important,
count.
the most important thing is it was at the back of your mind that you want to make yourself a better
I think
person.
so. Yeah, I think so. And it's one day at a time, you know. Recovery is not a destination, it's a journey, and it's a tough one. But
baby steps.
yeah, one day at a time, man. You know, don't over. I remember coming out of treatment thinking I want to be sober for a year like this guy, and that just led me to a relapse, you know. And now it's, you know, when I go to bed at night, the first thing I do is I thank my higher power for keeping me sober that day. Because I don't know, you know, truthfully, guys, I don't know about tomorrow. Something monumental can happen and I can end up at Kengeles, maybe see you there, you know?
No, I think our goal is different now. We're going to try channel the viewers to the center. And, you know, that's the goal now, helping many people as we can with this platform. We know we can't physically go and help individually, but we want to use the Men's Forum as a healthy platform where we have people like you on board to make change,
and
positive
also
change and touch lives.
The passion you guys have that I'm seeing to be here on a Sunday, filming every day, but to actually be here on a Sunday when you could be doing anything else, to sit and do this podcast is commendable and remarkable, you know.
Apart from my wife making noise that I don't take on dates.
Yeah.
But she understands. She's been awesome.
Yeah, and it's great though. I mean, that's the passion that will make this successful. It's not, you know, you're not just doing it because you want to be in the spotlight. You're doing it because you want to change lives. I think that's the key.
Thank you so much for coming onto the Men's Forum. There's so much amazing stuff that, you know, we've learned from you in this conversation.
Likewise, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. And with that, thank you guys also so much for tuning in. We will definitely put out when he does open his institution. Is that what it's called? An institution?
Healing center.
A healing center. And we will see you guys in the next one.
Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.